Well, it's good to see you all back here on one of our broadcasts. We haven't done these in a while because we've been busy opening school. And I'm proud to report that we've just completed our 5th week of a successful opening. And I just want to thank all of our teachers, all of our learners, all of our families, all of our staff, everyone in our community that's doing everything they can to make schools a safe place and to allow the learning to continue. We were so devastated when schools closed last March, and we think it's such an honor and a privilege to be able to reopen our schools in such a safe way. And we really appreciate all the efforts that everyone is taking to wear their masks, to social distance, to wash their hands frequently, not just when they're in schools, but when they're outside of school. We need to ask all of you to continue doing that. Now, the main purpose for today's broadcast is to talk about the second semester. I know we're just 5 weeks into the first semester, but we do think it's important that we start looking a little bit down the road. So I've invited Dr. Karen Woodford, our Chief Learning Officer, onto the broadcast to talk a little bit about what may happen in the second semester. But Karen, before we do that, can you just remind our viewers what it is we're actually doing now in our different models?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Schuch. So we have 3 primary models here in Bedford that we have started with this year. Our first one is our K-6 in-person learning model. That's going very well. Our kindergarten through 6th grade students can come to school every day in person, Monday through Friday. And then we have our grade 7 through 12 in-person blended model. And in that model, our 7th through 12th graders can come to school 2 days a week with an optional possibility of a flex day on Wednesdays based on the individual needs of the student. They are working with learning coaches to get their work done. And those learning coaches will sometimes suggest that students may come to campus more than 2 or 3 days a week, or sometimes we'll give them the option of coming less than 2 days a week. It's really based on what the students need. Those students are doing all of their work primarily virtual, but they do have the option to schedule face-to-face remediation time or face-to-face meetings with their teachers on campus. And then our third model is our Bedford Connects program, which is 100% virtual, and that's a kindergarten through 12th grade model. And those students do all of their work virtually with their teachers in a virtual environment.
Okay, so that's really informative, I think, especially for folks that may not be as connected to what we're doing. And I think it's important as we talk about what may happen second semester and choices that families may have. But before we leave what we're currently doing, I know that our configuration of our in-person and our blended is a little bit different. We don't just have elementary schools and middle schools and high schools doing what they used to do. Can you remind people of how those different models are working on the elementary, middle, and high school campuses? Like who goes where, basically?
Sure. So primarily our kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, and in some of our elementary buildings, our 4th graders go to our elementary school buildings, and we are able to social distance because we have spread our students out into other classroom areas. So for instance, a classroom that may have held 20 students before, we've cut that classroom in half, and so we only have 10, 12, 14 students in a classroom, so we can socially distance. And then we're using our staff to really rotate the teachers so that our students are not mixing groups during the day. And then we were able to move some of our 4th and 5th grade students to our middle school buildings, again, so that we could spread our students out so they're not so compacted during the school day to allow for physical distancing. And so our middle school buildings have 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. And again, some of our elementary schools were able to hold their fourth graders, and in that case, we left them there. And those configurations are specifically spelled out on our FAQ page on our Bedford County website. But again, in that in-person model, we're doing a lot of teaming with teachers where the teachers move between kids, but the students stay within the same cohort for most of the day. And then in our 7th through 12th grade model, all of our 7th, 8th graders up through 12th graders are on our high school campuses. And again, they rotate days they're there so that we can allow for physical distancing. So our learning coaches primarily have groups of students, and they may have in total 20 students that they manage as a learning coach. They work specifically with those students on social emotional learning. They work with them on career choices. They work and guide them through a program called Major Clarity that helps them think about their future career choices and their pathways in school. And then while they're with their learning coaches, they actually will then connect with their teachers who are in a hybrid format online. And then their learning coaches are helping them work through their work during the day. And again, they can connect face-to-face. They can ask for an appointment, or a teacher can require that a student come and meet with them to do a small group lesson. And then the students would leave their learning coach and go to that teacher's classroom. And again, the reason that they come 2 to 3 days a week is because even though the learning coach may have 20 students for the entire week, 10 of them may come on Monday and then 10 of them on Tuesday. So we break those groups down so that, again, we're keeping them physically distanced and we're not mixing groups throughout the day. So there's very little movement so that we don't, when we do our contact tracing, if we were to have an outbreak with COVID-19, we would not have mixed students with large numbers of other students on campus.
Okay, well, thank you, Karen, for reviewing that, because I think it's really important, since we've had families that have chosen one of these options, to hear about all of the options. And if you think about it, when we first put these plans out and we asked families to commit to one of these options, they hadn't been in the setting yet. And
Right.
What we had said at the outset, because of all of the operational challenges that are guided by the choices that these families made, that we needed them to commit for at least the first semester. Well, now we're at the point where we're thinking about the second semester. And I guess I want to know if somebody is in person and wishes to switch to remote, or if someone is remote and wishes to switch to the in-person, whether it's the 5-day-a-week up through 6th grade, or whether it's the blended hybrid model at the high schools for grades 7 through 12. How are they going to have an opportunity to let somebody know that, and what can they do about that?
So I think the most important thing for parents to know, if they are happy with the model that their child is in right now, if they are happy in the virtual environment with Bedford Connects, or if they're happy with the in-person model, whether that's the K-6 model or the 7th through 12th model, they don't need to do anything. They will just remain enrolled just as they are right now. If parents would like to make a switch, as you mentioned, let's say their student is in Bedford Connects 100% virtual, and they feel like at the end of the semester in January, they're ready for their students to come back, or their students are ready to come back to in-person learning, they will need to complete a form to indicate that. And on that form, we'll ask some pretty specific questions. If they're coming back to in-person learning, we'll need to know, will they need transportation in the morning? Will they need transportation in the afternoon? What addresses, things like that. But the same can be said if they're in the in-person setting and they want to move over to 100% virtual. It's the same form that they would fill out. Now, it's important that we get those forms back pretty quickly, because we have a lot of planning to do, because when we opened up all of our options in the summer, we moved staff between our locations to ensure that we had enough staff at locations to serve our learners. And so we'll need to plan if we need to make major shifts in staff, if we need to make major changes in transportation routes to allow for physical distancing on school buses. So we are going to release that form on October the 19th to families. It will be sent out through our school messenger system. It will be posted on our website. We'll put it out on social media. We'll ask principals to send call out reminders so parents know the form is available. And then we're going to ask that the form be returned on November the 2nd, and that will be the last day we'll accept the form. And so that will indicate if there only is a change that parents would want for their learners.
Okay, so just so I've got it straight, forms will be available October 19th.
Correct.
And I've got until November 2nd to turn them in if I'm a parent out there that wants to make a change.
That's
if I'm
correct.
happy with what I've got, then I don't have to do anything. Now, let's say I make the change or I stay where I am. Do you anticipate this is the last opportunity we're going to give families to make this selection for this school year? Do we essentially want to have our message be, you made one selection, you have one chance to make another selection, and then we need you to stick with that selection till the end of the year? Is that our position?
It really is. I think in our first choices with the summer, as students were coming back in, we were trying to be very lenient, and we were trying to work with families to help them. And we had some switching back and forth, and it did offer some complications. We feel like parents and students have had an opportunity to really be a part of the model that they chose the first time. So they should know if they really like it or they really want something different. So this will be just a one opportunity to make a change at the end of the semester. And after November 2nd, we will not accept any more changes between our learning environments.
So Karen, let me ask you this, with such a big choice that families have to make. I imagine there's some who are clearly happy with what they're doing and wish to stay and they don't have to do anything. We've got others who know they want to switch. It just isn't working and they need to switch back. But what if there are parents out there, and I imagine there have to be, that just aren't sure which is the best environment for their child, or if they have multiple children? Who do you suggest they reach out to help them kind of walk through that decision, given that we're saying this is a decision we expect them to stick with until the end of the school year?
Right. I would suggest they reach out to the principal of the environment that they are currently in. So if they're currently in person in a school, I would reach out to that school administrator. If I were a parent of a student in Bedford Connects, I would reach out to one of the administrators in our Bedford Connects program. And all of that information for contact is on our website. If they still are just a little unsettled and want to talk through that a little bit more, they're welcome to call the instruction department here at the school board office, and one of the instruction directors or myself will be happy to talk them through that decision so that we can help them make the best decision for their students.
And I'm gathering from an earlier response, Karen, that when you talked about if transportation is needed, I assume we're still asking as many families as possible to drive their children just to help us with all the safety requirements on the buses. So we'll go ahead and do that. I've only got one last question. You've been very thorough, and thank you. As you were describing our models, it seems like there is one grade level, fourth grade, that can be a little different depending on the building and its capacity. And so my question for you is, if I'm a fourth grade parent, a parent of a current fourth grader who is currently in our Bedford Connects program, and I ask to come back in person, am I necessarily guaranteed to go back to the elementary school, even if that elementary is currently serving fourth grade learners? Or is it possible, based on our building capacities, that we might send some of those fourth graders to our middle schools where we have other fourth graders? Have you thought through that at all?
We've talked about that because we want to make sure we're keeping all of our students safe. So if we have a school that really is at capacity with a fourth grade group that has been there in person for some time, and we feel like adding a group of students, especially a large group of students, to that school would put students a little bit too physically close. We have discussed going ahead and putting those students at the middle school where we have a little bit more capacity for our fourth graders and a lot more room.
Okay, and I'm glad you share that, because I think as parents are making these choices, we would just want them to know that that might not necessarily happen, but that it might be a real possibility. And in some elementary schools, we don't even have fourth grade, so they might automatically be going to the middle school.
Correct.
Well, you've done such a fantastic job explaining all of this. Is there anything else you want to leave with our viewers before we sign off today?
I don't think so. I think I just want to reiterate what you said. We've had a great start to the school year, and I appreciate the families who have worked hard with their students to keep their students safe and learning. The only other thing I think I would add would be that if parents are planning on moving their students to the virtual option, especially if they have very young children in kindergarten, first and second, I think that would warrant a great conversation with our administration at Bedford Connects, because we are finding that our youngest learners are struggling a little bit more with the virtual piece. And so that may be something that they might really want to think through if they're thinking about moving over to virtual for their students. It does take a big commitment from their parents to be there with them, kind of facilitating that learning. But otherwise, I think we've covered it all.
To our viewers, thank you for tuning in with us today. We know this is a big decision. We again want to thank everyone for their great efforts. We're so proud that we've been able to open schools to the extent that we have, and we know things are very different. We ask you to continue to be patient and flexible with each other, with our staff, and with our community as we get our brains around COVID and where it may be taking us in the future. We are hoping for a day when we don't have to do things like this to operate schools, but we know that we're going to be doing that for the foreseeable future. So thank you all, and have a great day.